From the men behind Kuba and the Two Strings comes Ultraman Rising, an American animated film about the Japanese superhero, Ultraman. For those who might not know, Ultraman made his debut in the 1966 special effects TV show of the same name. The show followed the adventures of a defense team in their quest to protect the world from aliens and giant monsters. However, when things got too tough, a member of the team secretly transformed into Ultraman to save the day. Ultraman was the second entry of the Ultra series, and Ultraman Rising is the latest of its countless entries. But don't let that worry you, because as a standalone movie, Ultraman Rising doesn't require that you know anything about Ultraman to enjoy it. You can come as you are. Nevertheless, Shannon Tyndall, one of the film's two directors, eagerly identifies as an Ultra series fan and has filled the film with nods to the larger franchise. But still, no need to worry. Not recognizing these Easter eggs and references won't detract from the viewing experience for newcomers. They're just winks and nods that longtime fans can notice and appreciate. That said, let's look at some of these nods. And just a warning, there will be spoilers from here on out. Familiar faces such as Bemular, the very first Ultraman enemy and the very first enemy seen in the movie, and Naranga, another early enemy in the original TV series, serve as fodder for Ultraman to fight. Other monsters like Baltan, Gamora, and Skydon, all characters from the original series as well, show up as toys at various points throughout the movie. Ella King, a fan favorite from Ultra 7, and the previously mentioned Gamora are momentarily noted to be deceased. Gazato, a popular villain from Ultraman Tiga also known as Gozort, receives a name drop. Next, in a break from tradition, Kenji, the lead character for Ultraman Rising, doesn't need anything to turn into Ultraman. The man does it through sheer will alone. Typically in the Ultra series, Ultraman requires a device to switch forms. For example, Shin Hayata uses the Beta Capsule to become Ultraman, and Dan Moriboshi uses the Ultra Eye to become Ultra 7. But Kenji isn't the first Ultraman to not need a device, and in what is perhaps a nod to this character, that distinction belongs to Hideki Go, the protagonist of Return of Ultraman. Speaking of transformations, Kenji's transformation sequence towards the end of the film is a compilation of those belonging to the classic Ultra brothers. It starts with a solid red background of the original Ultraman, transitions into the starry background of Ultraman Ace, adds the white rings of Ultraman Taro, and eventually boasts the sparkling orange of Ultraman Jack.
We gonna do this together?
Well, I'm not gonna do it alone.
The relationship between Kenji and his father, Professor Sato, has a few major parallels with the relationship between Yen, aka Ultraman Leo, and Dan, aka Ultra 7, from the 1974 series, Ultraman Leo. Kenji is the younger, inexperienced Ultraman like Yen, who relies on the older Ultraman and has to defend the world in the place of the older hero, who can no longer do the job after receiving a serious injury.
Then you get hurt, can't hack it anymore, and I get to come back and clean up the mess you made as da-dun-da-da, Ultraman.
Professor Sato even uses the same type of brace, with the same arm, that Dan does in Ultraman Leo. While the vehicle Sato drives is the Mazda Cosmo, the vehicle of choice for Matt, the defense team from Return of Ultraman. Its license plate reads M78U7. Nebula M78 is the home of various Ultra heroes, but U7 is short for Ultra 7, yet another thing connecting Sato to Ultra 7. The climax of Ultraman Rising has a lot in common with the opening fight in the first episode of Ultraman Leo. Those similarities include the fight taking place in the ocean during a fierce storm, the veteran Ultraman having his right leg damaged by the enemy. And finally, the two Ultramen working together to take down the Big Bad. For those who grew up with the American dub of the original Ultraman, which is probably how many older Americans are familiar with the series today, the opening from that version of the show was briefly played and sung by characters during the third act.
He's our hero, Ultraman.
On that note, the title screen uses the swirl effect from the openings of the earliest Ultra series shows, Ultra Q and Ultraman, which is accompanied by Ultraman's color timer sound effect. Ultraman's first appearance in Ultraman Rising seems to be a callback to the title character's memorable introduction in the 2022 film, Shin Ultraman. In both cases, the character makes a dramatic descent from the sky and gradually comes into view as he slowly rises through a cloud of smoke. Finally, Ultraman Rising acknowledges the rich history between Toho Studios and Tsuburaya Productions. Special effects wizard Eiji Tsuburaya was responsible for the spectacle in many of the early special effects films from Toho, films like Godzilla, Rodan, and Mothra, and many others. And whenever he got his own studio off the ground, that being Tsuburaya Productions, he was allowed to use many of Toho's assets, and they've since become treasured elements of the Ultra series. So it's no surprise that at least a few Toho-related references find their way into this film. For example, the baby monster Emmy does the jumping Shay dance. While nowadays many Westerners might only know it as Godzilla's victory dance from 1965's Invasion of Astro Monster, its use in that film was a reference to a popular gag from the early 60s series, Osomatsuku. It was a huge deal then, and is still fondly remembered today. Ultraman Rising even continues the proud tradition of using the roars of Toho monsters as stock sound effects. The trailer had the mother monster belting out a familiar roar. Over the years, in modified form, it has belonged to Godzilla, Varan, Baragon, Megalon, and various Ultra series monsters like Naranga. However, that roar didn't make it into the finished film. But an example of borrowed sounds that actually makes it into the film would be the chirps of Mothra, which works because Mothra's cries are used by Ultra monsters like Dodongo and Banira. But what do you think? Which of the callbacks or Easter eggs was your favorite? What about Easter eggs or callbacks that weren't mentioned in this video? What do you think of Ultraman Rising? Let me know in the comment section below. But until next time, take care.